You know that feeling, right? The alarm goes off and you swear you just closed your eyes. You somehow manage to get out of bed, already feeling behind, and then bam, the tidal wave of your to-do list hits you. We're all living this, more or less, this constant tug of war between sleepless nights and stressful days. But what is the actual cost? What happens when you combine being exhausted with being chronically stressed out? Is it like a catastrophic knockout punch to our brains? Or, well, is the story a little more complicated than that? Okay, so to really get what's at stake here, we have to talk about something called your executive functions. Now, the easiest way to think about these is to picture the CEO of your brain. Seriously. This is the part of you that handles the big picture stuff. Planning, solving tricky problems, coming up with creative ideas, all that high-level thinking. And when the CEO takes a hit, you can bet the rest of the company starts to wobble. So, how in the world do you measure something like that? Well, a team of researchers at Stockholm University came up with a really clever experiment to do just that, to try and pinpoint exactly what happens to our brain CEO when it's hit with both sleep loss and chronic stress. Here's how they set it up, and it's pretty smart. They took the same group of people and tested them under two totally different conditions. First, after everyone got 2 nights of a full glorious 9 hours of sleep. Then they tested them again after 2 nights of getting just 4 hours. This way, it's a perfect apples-to-apples comparison. You get to see each person's well-rested brain go head-to-head with their own sleep-deprived brain. So what kind of test do you give a brain CEO? They use something called the design fluency test. Basically, people have to connect dots to make as many unique patterns as they can. But here's the kicker. The rules keep changing on them. This forces their brain to slam the brakes on old patterns and adapt to new rules on the fly. It's a fantastic way to measure things like creativity and mental flexibility. And all of this was designed to test something called the two-hit hypothesis. The big question was, do these two things, stress and sleeplessness, interact in some careable way? You know, does being chronically stressed make you extra vulnerable to a bad night's sleep? In other words, is 1 + 1 actually equal to 3 in this situation? So the moment of truth. What did the data actually show? Well, this is where things get really interesting, because the answer kind of challenges what a lot of us might assume about burnout. Okay, first things first, the data confirmed what you'd probably guess. On the left here, you can see that, yep, performance dropped when sleep was cut from 9 hours down to 4. No surprise there. And on the right, that downward sloping line, it shows that the more chronic stress a person felt, the lower their score was. So each of these things on its own is definitely bad for performance. But here is the fascinating twist. Remember that two-hit knockout punch they were looking for? They didn't find it. Take a look at this graph. See how those two lines are almost perfectly parallel? That's the whole story right there. It shows that the hit your performance takes from being sleep-deprived is about the same whether you have low stress or high stress. The effects just add up. They don't multiply. The combination wasn't worse than the sum of its parts.
And the study's own conclusion puts it perfectly. They found that someone who's been under a lot of stress for a long time doesn't have an extra vulnerability to a lack of sleep when it comes to these core brain functions. Your brain CEO takes a hit from sleep loss, and it takes a separate hit from stress, but one doesn't seem to make the other catastrophically worse.
So if it's not this dramatic cognitive knockout blow we might have imagined, where's the real danger lurking? Well, it turns out that while your brain might be dodging that synergistic combo punch, your body is dealing with a full-on hormonal mutiny. Just look at this hormonal chaos. When you don't get enough sleep, cortisol, that's your main stress hormone, it goes up. At the exact same time, leptin, which is the hormone that tells your brain, hey, we're full, it tanks. And to make things worse, ghrelin, the I'm hungry hormone, goes through the roof. It's just a perfect storm for metabolic disaster. Scientists actually have a name for this. They call it an obesogenic hormonal milieu. It's a very fancy way of saying that not getting enough sleep literally puts your body into a chemical state that is primed to gain weight. It makes you crave more food while making you feel less full when you do eat. And maybe the most shocking finding of all was what happened to insulin resistance. Check out this chart. It shows a nearly 7-fold increase after just a couple of nights of bad sleep. Now, what that means is your body's cells start to ignore the signal from insulin, which makes it way, way harder to manage your blood sugar.
And that is a huge step down the road towards serious metabolic problems.
Okay, so let's zoom out and put all these pieces together. What does this actually mean for you, for me, for anyone trying to navigate a busy, stressful life? Well, the story is definitely more complex than we thought. It's not about a single dramatic knockout punch to your brain. So here are the big takeaways. Yeah, not getting enough sleep and being stressed out are both independently bad for your brain's performance, no question. But that damage seems to just add up. It doesn't multiply into something far worse. The real hidden danger, the thing we might not even notice, is probably the quiet systemic havoc being wreaked on our body's hormones and metabolism.
And that leads to the most important point of all. Managing your sleep and your stress isn't a luxury. It's not a nice to have. It is essential, non-negotiable maintenance. It's just like changing the oil in your car. You have to do it to keep things running. You're not just servicing your brain's CEO, you're servicing your body's entire operating system.
So in the end, your ability to perform every day is this incredible balancing act. It's not just about mental grit. It's about your physiological health, too. And the science shows us exactly what's at stake. So the only question left to ask yourself is, how are you going to tip those scales in your favor?